Hi everybody, LJ here. I wanted to say thank you for your questions and for your awesome comments. I've been without drugs going on 15 years come February, and so sometimes even telling my story can be discouraging. So hearing your awesome comments really encouraged me and it made me smile. So I appreciate that and thanks for listening. I'm going to answer some of your guys' questions now. I have them right here on a piece of paper. I wanted to start off with one of the questions about Alexander. That's my son. He will be 15 in January. And how did the drugs affect him, and are they still in his system? Alexander is perfectly fine. The only thing that really affected him was acid reflux, and he was premature. The drugs did not stay in his system very long at all. I had him tested by the University of Washington until he was 5 years old. Every 6 months, someone would come into our home and we would do activities and they would test his brain and see where he's at. And he's super intelligent. He attends a private IB school and is way smarter than me, sometimes a little too smart, but still a teenager, still has fun, doesn't have any health issues at all. And so he's doing great. One of the questions was how long after my son was born did I meet my husband? When Alexander was 7 years old, I met my husband. We were married by the time Alexander was 8 years old. Alex met him before me, actually. David was his youth leader at church, and then they built a really good relationship before we even got married, which was really cool and super helpful. Are my parents still struggling with drug abuse? My father is no longer struggling because he passed away in January. He used so much that his body failed him. We almost think that it was suicide because towards the end his health was so bad that he was just miserable, and he called my sister and just said, I don't want to do this anymore. And so we think that he committed suicide. If not, his body just completely failed. He was in the hospital quite a bit, close calls. My mother, she drinks heavily every day. She wakes up to it. And I do know that she still uses drugs on occasion. I do have a relationship with my sister. It's actually gotten stronger in the last couple months after my father passed away. It drew us closer. My sister likes to drink, and I think she uses marijuana, but we don't hang out together like that. We only see each other maybe once or twice a year, but we talk on the phone quite a bit. My stepmom, she moved on to Eastern Washington, and I'm not sure what her status is. I do know that my other siblings are currently using drugs, and I'm not in contact with any of them. Did I drink for fun, or did it go hand in hand with the drugs? In middle school, drinking started before any drugs did. There was a thing that was called beer runs. The guys would go and get alcohol, and we would have parties on the weekends and drink. During that time, I don't remember people using drugs. So for me, drinking was just for fun. I didn't use it as like medication or anything like that. What was the reason that I agreed to try weed on the bus? Was it peer pressure or because I saw my parents doing it? The reason I agreed to smoke the weed that I was offered on the bus is they were older guys, and me and my girlfriends just wanted to hang out with them and just had fun. For me, seeing my parents do drugs didn't really it didn't really like encourage me at all, like knowing that they had smoked weed. For me, I've never had anybody to care for me or discipline me. So I just did what I wanted to do, and it didn't matter. And for me, it was fun. At the time, it did open up doors to just other chaos. Do I believe that marijuana is a gateway drug? Or is there more of an influence of people close to you or your family or friends? I do believe marijuana is a gateway drug. And the reason is when you are doing marijuana, I know that now we have these weed shops, so a lot of adults are going there. But before, for me, it was when you did marijuana, you had to buy it from somebody. And usually those people were not always a good influence. And they sometimes offered more, or you would walk into a room and there would be people there that were doing more. than just marijuana, and it could be offered to you. For me, it's not just your friends, but I always tell my kids, show me your friends and I'll tell you who you are. It's also your emotional state, where you're at. So you may walk in there and think, well, tonight I'm just going to smoke a little weed, but you just broke up with your boyfriend, or you just went through a major loss and you're feeling not like yourself. And someone's like, hey, do you want to try this drug or that drug or this pill? Or hey, can I pick you up with this? Sometimes our mind is not powerful enough to say no, because our emotions have taken over our thoughts. That's what I've learned when it comes to marijuana and other gateway drugs. What made you more tempted to use more drugs? What made me tempted was exactly what I just said, my emotions. I was really depressed. I was very suicidal, and I was very alone all the time. And so for me, it was totally emotional. That's what made me want to do more drugs. It made me want to just numb the way I felt or escape where I was at. How did the constant moving affect you when you were younger before using drugs? And what was it like to move to all those schools at one time? And do you think this is why you were so good at academics? Sorry about that. I think that moving all the time made my life not consistent and very unstable and not trustworthy. I didn't trust anybody, and so I had to depend on myself a lot. And moving from school to school to school, I always had to meet new people, and I had to be to myself a lot. And so instead of being to myself, I would be more outgoing in my academics. Yes, I would just try to achieve as much as possible, even though I still battled these addictions and had this brokenness at home or wherever I was staying. It did make me dive in more, and it makes you hide. It made me hide what was really going on. I didn't have to show people my true pain. Instead, they could say, oh, look she got an award for that. Or, oh, look she's in ASB, or, oh, look, she just passed that test, or she's, playing basketball. People would see that instead of seeing the addiction and the pain. So yeah, for me, yeah, definitely it made me go out more. How did your dad's acceptance of you doing drugs change your perspective on drugs? It just kind of, I think his acceptance of it made me feel like I didn't have a dad anymore. And it made me feel like rejected by him, to be honest. You know what? You don't need anybody to protect you. You don't need anybody to care for you. You can do it yourself. You got yourself, you can do it. And so that hurt me when that happened. When my dad introduced me to drugs, I lost all respect for him, and I loved him with all my heart, but I felt complete rejection, and it just made me want to take care of myself, even if that meant I had to sell drugs or continue on that path or find an escape, which I did with my boyfriend. Are there any long-term effects that you might still be going through? Yeah, PTSD, completely. And it's not just from the drugs itself, it's from the environment that my life was in the environment I put myself in because of my addiction. In my later teen years, I have a lot of fears. I'm very overprotective, even of my home. I make sure that everything's locked up tight. It used to be that I couldn't even go to sleep at night unless my purse and my keys were next to my bed. It was just a couple years ago that I finally could go to sleep with the keys by the front door. So yeah, I have a lot of PTSD, and one of the ways that helped me through that was actually martial arts. I joined Kempo karate, and I learned a lot of self-defense, and so that helped a lot. Are the people that I talked about still on drugs, and what are they doing now? A lot of them are either in prison for life. I've had multiple friends overdose throughout the years. Some friends have victory stories too, and they're doing great and they're successful, and you would never even know that they did drugs. And so it's great. I do stay in contact with some of them and always try to just stay encouraging to them and love on them. But I do have boundaries. I'm a mama bear, so I don't let my kids around those environments. How did my son affect me and my recovery process? When I saw his little face, I just thought, how could I be so evil to do such a thing to something so perfect? So he was my driving point. He's what led me to Jesus, to be honest. He's what led me to fight and never give up. He is what led me to want to be better. I remember in my journal, when I used to journal, I would say, "Dear God, please let me be the mom that I am with Alex when Alex isn't around." Meaning I need to be good all the time. I need to fight. I need to say no to temptations. I need to be around people that are positive and that are seeking recovery or seeking goodness and normalness in a sense too. So no, and still to this day, he is my fighting factor because I'm proud. I'm proud to be his mom, and I'm honored. Sorry, I'm going to start crying because I'm honored to be his mom. He's incredible, and he's so like forgiving and understanding, even though everything we've been through. So great. Who was the biggest influence and biggest positivity? Well, I told you I was in that group called Faith Homes. It was a women's home for young moms that were single, and her name is Amy. She was my counselor there, and we still talk to this day. I actually talked to her yesterday. We talk every week, actually. She still counsels me, and she knows my story and has been non-judgmental at all and always showed me the right resources and directed me in the path of my faith and allowed me to be me, even if we have different faiths. And also, she's like my mother. She's kind of adopted me in after Alex was born. I was looking for healthy things to do, and I would go to a Bible study at her house, and she was just very, very strict on me in the sense of like, where are you at? Where have you been? What are you doing? She always made sure I had gas money to get to Bible study. She would always call and check in with me, and she's still in my life as well. Not an everyday basis, but she was very powerful for me. She was the mama that I really needed, and her name's Terry. She owns a really cool tea shop called the Olive Branch in Tacoma, and it's just been really fun to watch her grow in that, and I was able to be part of her opening up that business, so that was really cool too. I liked this statement that's one of you wrote. It says, "It seems like instead of punishing children who are using drugs, people, quote, schools too, need to step back to understand their situation and help them." I 100% agree with that. I remember when I first got suspended for drinking alcohol, they sent us home. That was it. Like you lost all rights to play sports and participate in activities. I wasn't allowed to do any of that anymore. My parents didn't show up to my suspension meeting, so they suspended me for another 2 weeks. And I had no support. So I was sent home to a home that had no structure, that was using drugs. And I lost everything. I wasn't allowed to do anything. I wasn't allowed to participate in anything at school anymore. And so I had no drive. At that point, I had no drive. And it hurt. I was embarrassed. And it actually made me party harder because I had nothing to do after school. Instead, me and my friends would just go and get drunk, smoke weed, do our schoolwork, of course. I mean, I still graduated through those years of junior high, but yeah, to be honest, I think that we need to find a way to support young people in addiction or who make mistakes. One of the biggest issues is lack of resources. We don't have enough resources a lot of the times to help with that, is what I found in a lot of schools and other programs. So it can be really difficult and discouraging even for your teachers and staff. And to get to know the home, it'd be great to get to know parents and those things. I worked at Alderwood Middle School last year, just in the cafeteria for a little bit. And it was so fun because I did get to interact with the students and I got to meet them. And I just jumped in and started asking questions. And, I knew the kids that were smoking weed. I knew the kids that weren't doing so well. And I knew the kids that had the broken families just by the way that their demeanor was and what they were saying. And for me, I have a big mouth, so I would jump in and be like, hey, God has a plan for you. Like, you were created for something better. And it was cool because some of those kids did get suspended. And not that it's cool they got suspended, but it was cool because I got to see them in the community and I got to meet some of their parents. I would see the kids at the grocery stores and be like, hey, how's your son doing? And speak life into the parents. So yeah, I think that it would be great for the whole community to figure out a new way of punishment, I guess, or I would call it support of those that do struggle, because sometimes it only takes one time for you to make that mistake and everything's over. The question that was asked also was, what advice would you give to a friend that is using? I wouldn't give them any advice. I would give them support and I would give them resources. That's what I would do. I would make sure that you have boundaries with them because you don't want to get yourself caught up in anything. I would make a safe place for them. I would find someone that you find who is safe, maybe one of your teachers, maybe a parent, maybe somebody that you can share the information with. To be honest, it's not snitching, it's saving lives. I wish that someone would have spoke up for me and just let me know that they were there for me and that I had a safe place to talk to them. I think that's really what you can do, because giving advice, they don't want to hear it. It's not, a lot of times it's something that's going on emotionally and mentally that cause us to stay stuck in those ruts, and people feel lost and judged and not supported. So I encourage you to just find a safe place for them. Be that safe place. I had a friend who, she was addicted to heroin. After I had gotten clean, I had met her, and her struggle with heroin went on and on and on. And she would always call me when she needed a safe place to come down. And there was times where I called her every week, and I'm just like, hey, Stephanie, I love you, and give her an encouraging word, leave a voicemail. She was a horrible friend to me, but I called her every week and I left that message, and I was always there to take her to an AA meeting if she needed it. And she has been clean now for multiple years. She's a yoga instructor and she's happy and healthy and doing great. And it's so good to see. So sometimes, it's just being an encouraging word. Let me see if there's any other questions maybe on here. Yeah, I think that's about everything, guys. I want to say thank you again for having me. Hopefully one day you'll get to meet my husband and hear his story. He's from Los Angeles and he lived in Mexico for a few years, and he has a pretty powerful story as well. I just wanted to say, stay encouraged. COVID-19 really has some of us just kind of sad and stuck, and we're ready to get back together and hang out. And don't be afraid to reach out. If you guys need something, your staff has a lot of resources for you. I know that, and they care about you. And thanks for having me. So cheers. Have a great Christmas and Hanukkah and everything else. Bye.